I read a report the other day which said there's been more than $445 billion of losses related to cyber risks. So I think it's about time that as a board we really understand how our risks should be playing out with our strategy.
What I find mostly in organizations is we don't understand what we actually care about. So we don't have asset registers which are linked to the corporate risk register of an organization to understand the vulnerabilities. And we end up spending too much money because we're trying to protect just about everything and spending £100 protecting a £1 asset.
That's a really good point. And Matt, we were talking earlier about our risk appetite. And how do you think we should play that out?
Yeah, so I think quite key here is the concept of governance. That's the starting point, and that will help organisations understand what they need to be doing around people, process and technology. And then based around that, you then get to understand maybe what your assets are around those three tenets. Depending on the nature of your business, maybe availability is your key concern. People like telecoms providers, they need things up and running 24/7, which is very different to if you have very sensitive data and a data breach or data loss would be your concern. So it's definitely a requirement for the boards to have the understanding of governance, what they want it to be within the context of their risk appetite.
When the board level directors think about putting money into mitigating cyber risk, they think that they're putting money into protecting something. What they don't realize is that if they put money into cyber risk from the point of view of an opportunity, they can reap handsome reward.
As a company now realizes that as we've come into the digital age, that every part of the organization needs to be aware of the cybersecurity risks. I still think, though, if you focus too much on the digital side and not enough on the people, whether that's internal to the company or external to the company, it's really to do with the culture of the company and how you deal with that going forward. Are proper checks done when you work with external organisations?
I'd really like to talk now a little bit about how to build resilience into the organisation as a board. This to me is just as important a discussion as we would be building resilience into our supply chain. And cyber attack and resilience to cyber attack is just as important for all our systems, whether they're in the back office or the front office, manufacturing, every aspect of our business.
There's a lot of room for testing and validation because you have your systems that people are using in their day-to-day, but you don't necessarily understand yourselves what the risks are, the vulnerabilities in those systems.
In the context of a blended attack, we've got to ask ourselves, what is the level of training, what's the level of vigilance, what is the level of scenario planning that our employees, our human resources, our organization has in terms of dealing with that 911 type of emergency.
As a board, I think we now need to think about this whole issue in terms of scenario planning, just like we do scenario planning to look at our strategy.
I think an important part is, now that we've brought this issue up to this level, is to make sure we don't underestimate the investment that's going to be needed, because so often you see organisations giving people down on the front line challenges and targets without committing the money that's needed. I think we also need to really do some big picture, some bold scenario planning around what could happen, because it's very hard for most of us to imagine all the different types of things we could be hit with. I think, bringing in some outside experts maybe to take the board through half a day of, what are the things that can really go wrong, because that will then allow us to push some of that thinking down through the organisation as well.